5 years ago, the tyrannical rule of the Arcadia Empire, which had lasted for centuries, was finally overthrown in a coup led by a mysterious black machine dragon. To this day, the identity of the knight who piloted that dragon remains unknown. People continue to talk about the knight and refer to him as the Black Hero. After the fall of Arcadia, the kingdom was renamed the New Kingdom of Atismata. One night, Lux, the seventh prince of the now-defunct Arcadia Empire, was chasing a cat across the rooftops of the New Kingdom's royal castle. Unexpectedly, the roof beneath him collapsed, and he ended up crashing straight into the royal bath, landing right on top of Lisha, the princess of Atismata. Lux had no idea how things had gone so wrong. Lisha immediately covered herself and accused him of being a pervert. Clearly furious, she demanded to know what his last words were going to be before he died. Lux panicked, scrambling to think of something to say. Then he remembered a piece of advice from an old man he once worked with. Women appreciate compliments. So Lux told her that she was cute, had a great figure, and was very attractive. Lisha turned bright red with embarrassment, while everyone around them screamed in shock. Lux was horrified at how things had spiraled so quickly. He tried to explain that he had not meant it that way, but before he could say anything else, Lisha struck him hard. Lux was immediately taken into custody. He felt incredibly unlucky, especially since he still had work to do that day. He shouted that the whole thing was just a misunderstanding, apologized, and explained that he had fallen from the roof. When another girl arrived, Lux quickly tried to explain himself. He said that a girl's purse had been stolen by a cat, and he had been chasing it across the rooftops to get it back. He had no idea it would lead to this. Cruelchifer, one of the girls nearby, asked if the sword device lying nearby belonged to him. She noted that it was rare to see someone carrying two swords at once, especially a black one like that. Not long after, another girl named Chalice appeared and asked what Cruelchifer was doing there. Cruelchifer casually replied that she had just come to see the adorable little peeping Tom. Chalice then told Lux that the headmistress wanted to see him. Chalice and Tilfer brought Lux to the academy's headmistress. On the way there, Tilfer mocked Lux, saying he must have guts to go around groping girls while the third-year knights were away. It turned out that the place Lux had stumbled into was the Royal Drag Knight Academy. When Lux explained the situation to the headmistress, Relie, she admitted that she already knew who he was, a former prince of the old Arcadia Empire. Relie vouched for Lux, saying she had known him for a long time and believed he would never do something like that on purpose. Lux knew the academy trained drag knights under the rule of the New Kingdom of Atismata. Relie explained that ever since the coup 5 years ago, the kingdom had put everything it had into training drag knights to ensure their strength could rival other nations. The Academy's mission was to train young girls who were believed to have more potential as drag knights than boys. Relie then asked Lux to work at the Academy. Both Tilfer and Chalice were stunned. Lux, too, was confused about why she would want him there, especially as a boy. Relie explained that ever since the coup, male drag knights had become extremely rare. Someone like Lux was now valuable. She also believed that the two swords he carried were not just for show. Of course, Tilfer and Chalice were not immediately convinced. Then Lisha entered with a group of other girls. She made it clear that she disagreed with the idea of letting a boy, especially a shameless one like Lux, work at the academy. Lux realized that Lisha was the same girl from the bath earlier. Tilfer warned Lisha to keep her distance from him, and Chalice told the others to stay away as well. In the end, Relie handed the decision about Lux's punishment over to Lisha. She challenged him to a duel and said she would determine whether or not he was worthy of being a drag knight at the academy. The other girls seemed intrigued by the challenge. Relie added that Lux had won a prize from a royal tournament in the city and was still undefeated. His nickname was the Undefeated Weakest. Lisha was shocked that someone she saw as a pervert could be undefeated, and the more she learned about him, the less she liked him. Lisha pointed her sword at him and declared that it would be a one-on-one battle using their drag rides. If Lux lost, he would be imprisoned and treated as a criminal, but if he won, he would be pardoned and allowed to work at the academy. Lisha asked her friends to announce that there would be a duel between the new princess of the Atismata Kingdom and the former prince of the old Arcadia Empire. Lux was stunned to find out that Lisha was actually a princess. She then revealed that she was the first queen of the Atismata Kingdom, the very one that had destroyed the Arcadia Empire 5 years ago. Shortly after, Aerie, Lux's younger sister, arrived with a friend to meet him. Aerie couldn't believe what Lux had done. Lux apologized for causing a commotion at Aerie's school and asked why her friend wouldn't sit down. Aerie's friend said she had heard that if she got too close, Lux could lift her skirt just by breathing. Lux was shocked to hear that. Aerie introduced her roommate, whose name was Noct. Noct didn't expect that Aerie's older brother was the kind of guy who gave off such a sketchy vibe. Lux insisted that it was all just a misunderstanding. Aerie looked troubled, wondering what she would do if Lux were arrested. Ever since the coup, they had been treated as criminals just for being survivors of the royal family. The debt they carried as part of their pardon was too much for Aerie to handle on her own. She urged Lux to make sure he worked properly as a volunteer. Lux told her he had been doing his best, but Noct brought up how his efforts had apparently ended with him barging into the girls' bathroom and causing a scene. Aerie felt overwhelmed at the thought of her brother ending up in jail. Lux apologized again. No matter what, Aerie wanted Lux to win against Lisha. Noct pointed out that Lisha was unbeatable at the academy, but to Aerie that made her a worthy opponent for Lux. The day of the match finally came. Students gathered in the stadium to witness the battle between Lisha, the first queen of the Atismata Kingdom, and Lux, the seventh prince of the former Arcadia Empire. Lux and Lisha faced off in the arena. Lisha asked if Lux knew why she had challenged him to a fight. Lux assumed it was because he was a prince from Arcadia. She told him she would reveal the reason if he managed to win. Both of them activated their drag rides. Lisha mocked Lux's drag ride, which turned out to be an ordinary wyvern. Her own drag ride, in contrast, was a powerful high-level unit named Tiamat. According to her, there was a huge difference between his and hers. Aerie, watching from the stands, was amazed. High-level drag rides rarely use ancient weapons, which were incredibly powerful and could only be controlled by strong individuals. The difference between Lisha's Tiamat and Lux's wyvern was clearly massive. The match began. Lisha opened with a barrage of shots aimed at Lux, and he tried to dodge them. She easily landed a hit. Before continuing, Lux made a request. If the match ended in a draw, he hoped they could settle things through negotiation. He also apologized for what had happened in the bathroom. Hearing that, Lisha called him unbelievably stupid, which only made her angrier. Immediately after, Lisha activated her special weapon, 7 heads. Chalice was surprised that she would go that far. Tilfer questioned whether it was safe to use such dangerous weaponry with students so close to the battlefield. Before launching her attack, Lisha suggested that Lux stop using that wyvern and switch to his other sword device. Unfortunately, Lux did not want to use that sword. Lisha began her attacks and Lux kept dodging. It turned out that Lisha's attacks were strong enough to damage the arena's protective barrier. Lux started to worry that if one of those attacks hit him, it might actually kill him. The match announcer requested for the barrier to be repaired, and Rayleigh wondered whether Lux and Lisha were thinking about the safety of the audience at all. According to Noct, if things kept going like that, Lux could be in serious danger. Aerie pointed out that it was Lux's own doing, but even so, she said there was one thing that could always be said about him. Once Lux made up his mind, he would always follow through. Meanwhile, Lisha thought that if the fight dragged on, time might run out and the match would end in a draw. She began to suspect that this was the reason Lux was called the undefeated weakest. Lisha had no choice but to use the Tiamat's highest special move, Spray Shot. That attack brought Lux down and destroyed the surrounding area of the arena. This special move was a rare ability only possessed by high-grade drag rides, and Tiamat's unique trait was the power to manipulate gravity. However, using it together with a special weapon could cause Lisha to lose control. Thinking the battle was over, Lisha believed she had finally defeated Lux, but suddenly, her body froze and she couldn't move. Lux asked her to leave her drag ride. Lisha refused to give up just because of that. She still wanted to fight and defeat him, but right then the arena's protective barrier disappeared. At that moment, an abyss appeared. A monster that was only supposed to show up at the ruins. Aerie was shocked and questioned why there was an abyss there at all. The information center immediately called for instructors to bring the triads and evacuate all the students into the school. Chalice and Tilfer tried to calm the students and urge them to take shelter inside. The command center instructed all wyverns to form a protective shield around the gargoyle and defend the students. Hearing this, Lisha was confused and didn't understand what was going on. The abyss's attack managed to break through the barrier and Lux rushed in to strike back. He asked Lisha for one favor. Meanwhile, Chalice scolded Aerie and Noct for still being outside when they should have already taken shelter. Tilfer also called out Noct, especially since she was a triad member, for standing around doing nothing. Noct explained that Lux was Aerie's older brother. At that time, Lux was still fighting the abyss. Tilfer was surprised that he was willing to take on such a powerful enemy using only a standard drag ride. Chalice advised Aerie not to interfere and just wait until the instructors arrived, but Aerie believed that since there was only one enemy, Lux would lose. Lisha had already stepped back by then and felt relieved that Tiamat had calmed down. It turned out that Lux's request was for her to come down and help target the enemy. Lisha was annoyed and asked if Lux was trying to give her orders, but Lux explained that he would give her the signal to fire, and that signal would be when he raised his sword above his head. Lisha didn't know what Lux was planning to do with that broken sword, but she knew her 7 heads cannon had only one shot left. She couldn't believe she was about to use it, all to support someone like Lux, a so-called useless prince. Lux kept dodging the abyss while occasionally firing at it. The command center asked Lux to hold on, saying help was on the way. After that, Lux raised his sword as a signal, but the abyss immediately broke it. Lisha then fired the 7 heads cannon at the abyss and successfully landed a hit. After the shot, Lisha mentioned that if a defensive maneuver could open up a window of opportunity for attack, then she could unleash her full strength. And that was the basic strategy for fighting monsters. She quickly rushed over to Lux, who had collapsed. Later that afternoon, Lisha was soaking in the bath, replaying everything that had happened. She started to suspect that Lux had intentionally made himself the target to give her a chance. And it was the first time a guy had ever tried to help or protect her. At that moment, Lux was lying weakly in bed. He dreamed of someone asking whether his wyvern would fight alongside the other person's Bahamut or against it. The dream woke him up immediately. Right then, he saw Lisha walk in and ask how he was doing. Lux asked if she had come to take care of him. Lisha put down the glass of water she brought and said that she came because Lux had saved her. Lisha could no longer tell whether Lux was genuinely humble or just acting arrogantly. She also wondered if everyone in the Arcadia Kingdom behaved like that. Lux himself wasn't quite sure anymore. He had been forced out of the kingdom since he was a child. Lisha was puzzled by how Lux could be willing to fight an abyss with just a regular drag ride. That wasn't something ordinary people did. Lux admitted he didn't really remember all the details. He just felt like he had no other choice back then. Lisha thanked him for protecting everyone, and Lux responded by calling her a generous princess. Lisha proudly said that she did consider herself to be a fair and generous one. They both laughed. Lisha confessed that she now completely trusted Lux, and Lux felt relieved hearing that. Then Lisha revealed the real reason she had challenged Lux to a duel. It was because she couldn't just let him walk away after seeing her body. Lux admitted that he had seen everything and thought it was beautiful. Lisha scolded him and called him a pervert, though what she was actually referring to was the mark below her stomach. It turned out to be the emblem of the Arcadia Kingdom, and Lux was surprised to find that he had the same mark. Lisha wasn't ready to explain why yet, but she asked Lux not to tell anyone about it. Lux promised he wouldn't. Lisha then asked why Lux was so stubborn about not using his black sword device. Lux couldn't give her an answer, and Lisha understood. If they both had secrets, then it was only fair. She told him that starting tomorrow, Lux would officially be a part of the academy. The previous order from the headmistress had been revoked, and Lux would now be attending as a student knight of the royal family. Lux was shocked to hear that and didn't quite understand how it all happened. Before leaving, Lisha asked Lux to start calling her by her name, just like the others did. Unbeknownst to them, their conversation had been overheard by Crucifer. That day marked Lux's official enrollment in the academy. He introduced himself in front of the class and greeted his classmates. As he looked for an empty seat, the other students began whispering about him. They couldn't believe the school had allowed a male student to enroll. Lux felt uneasy and wanted to leave as soon as possible, until a girl suddenly called out to him. Her name was Filthy, and she knew Lux. He was shocked since they hadn't seen each other in 7 years. The teacher asked if Filthy was someone Lux knew. He replied that she was his childhood friend. The teacher then allowed him to sit next to Filthy, but that seemed to upset Lai a bit. The teacher began the lesson and asked everyone to turn to page 27 in their textbooks. Lux quietly asked Filthy if he could look at her book. Filthy said he could, but only if he called her Fi-Chen, just like how she called him Lu Chan. Back when they were kids, Lux used to call her that, but now he felt embarrassed. The other students found the exchange cute and teased them for their special nicknames. Blushing, Lux called her Fi-Chen and borrowed her book. Filthy happily handed it over. Lisha looked increasingly annoyed at how close they seemed. During the break, a few students approached Lux and asked if it was true that he worked as a volunteer. Lux replied that it was simply part of his duty. More students began crowding around, eager to ask questions. To calm the chaos, Tilfer stepped in and told everyone to write down their questions and place them in a question box. Not long after, Lisha approached Lux with a surprising request. She wanted him to become her personal assistant. The entire class was shocked. They wondered what exactly a personal assistant would do and why someone like Lisha would ask a guy like Lux. Lisha casually mentioned that it shouldn't be a big deal, especially since Lux had already seen her naked once. Filthy quickly spoke up, saying that Lux was clearly uncomfortable around Lisha. Knowing that Filthy was the daughter of Aingram Industries, Lisha tried to win her over by offering her a donut and asking her to back off. But even after taking a bite, Filthy remained firm. Lux was still uncomfortable with Lisha's behavior. Just then, Crucifer entered the classroom and asked Lux to come with her, saying it was a request from Relie. She led Lux outside and he thanked her, realizing she had deliberately stepped in to help him out. Curious, he asked why she was helping him. Khun Chifer then asked if Lux had ever heard of the Black Hero, the Drag Knight who single-handedly destroyed the Arcadia Empire. To this day, no one knew the hero's true identity. She said she had a personal reason for needing Lux to find that mysterious person. That night, Lux had a dream about his past. He remembered Fuil speaking about human experimentation within the Empire and about the girl who had been his childhood friend. Fuil had said that they might need to eliminate everyone involved, but Lux had wanted to minimize the casualties. He woke up suddenly from the dream, only to realize his hand had landed on something soft. He jumped up in panic after realizing he had accidentally touched Filthy's chest. Filthy also woke up and greeted him casually. Lux was confused and had no idea why they were sleeping in the same bed. Filthy explained that this was her room, and that it had simply been a long time since they last slept together like when they were kids. Looking extremely flustered, Lux asked her to please put her clothes on. At that moment, Tilfer came to wake Lux up and opened the door to find them together. Embarrassed, she quickly apologized for the intrusion. Lux shouted that it was just a misunderstanding. Still, Tilfer wasted no time and spread the news to the rest of the academy. At breakfast, Ayuri, who came with Macht, met her older brother. She was stunned to hear that Lux had actually stayed overnight in his childhood friend's room. Lux tried to explain that he had simply gone to sleep in his own assigned room and didn't realize Filthy was his roommate. Ayuri was shocked, and Lux admitted he had spoken to Relie, the academy's headmaster, about it, but apparently there were no other vacant rooms left. Relie, who was also Filthy's older sister, had asked Lux to look after her. Even though the arrangement had Relie's approval, Lux was worried it might lead to misunderstandings, especially since rumors had already started spreading. He hadn't expected things to turn out this way. After hearing his explanation, Ayuri quickly left, even though Lux had hoped they could have breakfast together. Ayuri turned him down, saying that if they ate together, they'd probably end up wanting to spend even more time with each other. Ayuri hoped that Lux would be more careful about what they had talked about earlier. That afternoon, Lux visited the workshop and announced that he was there to accept the job he had been given. He found Lisha asleep on the floor. She said she was the one who had written the job request. When Lux asked where the workshop manager was, he was surprised to find out that Lisha herself was the manager. She showed Lux that she had finished preparing his wyvern. He didn't expect that she would be the one fixing it. Lisha explained that she had done it because Lux was part of the Royal Knights, a special unit made up of selected students. She recognized that Lux's skills as a drag knight were enough to join, and for the sake of the kingdom of Atismata, she hoped Lux would support them as well. Lux agreed to help however he could. Lisha told him that he would officially become a member after Class 3 and upon returning from the induction ceremony. She then invited Lux to go for a walk. According to her, to form a strong team as Royal Knights, they needed to understand each other better. So she brought Lux to a famous restaurant in the city. Lux felt he didn't belong in such a fancy place, but unexpectedly, Lisha had forgotten her wallet. In the end, Lux treated her to some snacks and invited her to sit by the pond. Lisha apologized even though she had been the one who asked Lux to accompany her. Lux encouraged her to eat the snack while it was still warm. The food turned out to be really good, but suddenly Lisha started feeling uneasy being there. Lux asked if she was alright. She admitted that she just needed a short rest. Lux then suggested a nice, quiet place to relax. He brought Lisha to the highest spot in the area just beneath the bell tower. She immediately liked the peaceful atmosphere. Lux knew about the place because he used to clean it as a volunteer, and ever since, he had grown fond of it. He praised Lisha for being able to fix a drag ride on her own. In his eyes, her technical skills were beyond that of a typical drag knight, more like a queen, even. Hearing that, Lisha walked toward the edge of the platform. Lux quickly stopped her, saying it was too dangerous. She then asked what being a queen meant to him and wanted him to tell her how someone could become a proper queen. Lisha also asked if Lux remembered the crest of the Arcadia Empire on her stomach. She revealed that 5 years ago she was taken hostage by the Arcadia Empire as leverage against her father, who had been involved in a coup. Even so, the coup went on without any attempt to negotiate for her release. Lisha felt abandoned. That crest was proof she had once been a prisoner of the old empire. While she was in prison, she had desperately hoped her father would come save her. What she truly wanted was for him to choose her over the country, but that never happened, and it broke her heart. She couldn't even bring herself to end her own life. So instead, she decided to devote herself to becoming someone worthy of serving the kingdom. She believed she wasn't fit to be a queen. But after her father died, she became the only surviving member of the Atismata royal family. Because of that, she had no choice but to take on the role of queen while continuing to hide the mark of Arcadia on her body. Lisha was sure that Lux must have also felt pain over losing his royal titles as a prince of Arcadia. That night, Lux couldn't stop thinking. He felt powerless, like someone who could no longer do anything a prince should be able to do. In his sleep, he dreamed of the past. Of the moment, he felt devastated by Fu Weil's actions. Lux had pleaded with Fu Weil to limit the casualties, but in the end, Fu Weil had killed everyone. It turned out everything had been planned from the start. Fu Weil laughed and said that thanks to Lux, they had survived. In his view, if he hadn't eliminated everyone, they would have eventually killed him. He claimed that Lux didn't understand anything, and that such weakness had no place in a king. In Fu Weil's eyes, Lux was the weakest of all. Lux woke up in shock just as the large bell started ringing. He had no idea what was happening. The next morning, a teacher gathered the trained students to inform them that an abyss had appeared in the southwest ruins earlier that morning. The Drag Knights from the Royal Security Forces had already been dispatched to intercept it. The students were told to prepare in case they were needed and to await further orders. Lux met up with Aerie and found that the students were already gathering. Lisha also stopped by to say goodbye. She had to leave because duty called. As a royal knight, she needed to be ready for danger at any time. Lux reminded everyone to stay alert. Lisha commented that they were all strong, and with that, they quickly left. Lux and Aerie couldn't join them since they were still students. After everyone had gone, Aerie asked Lux if something was bothering him. Lux admitted he hadn't expected the abyss to appear so soon. Meanwhile, the drag rides had already surrounded the abyss. Lisha gave the signal to attack together, but suddenly, a sound was heard. Not long after, the abyss exploded. At that moment, Filthy, who was with Lux, mentioned that she could hear a whistle just before the explosion. The abyss burst open and released a huge swarm of gargoyles. It turned out the mastermind behind the scene was the commander leading the troops from the royal capital. It was Regrid, the captain of the guard, and a knight from the Arcadia Kingdom. Lisha was shocked to find out that Regrid had betrayed the Atismata Kingdom. Regrid confessed that all he wanted was to restore what he believed to be justice. The gargoyles began attacking Lisha and her allies following Regrid's command. Lisha immediately used her 7 heads weapon to fire at them, but unfortunately, she got hit in the process. Noct quickly returned to the school and reported that the situation was critical. Aerie then asked Lux if he planned to go. Lux wanted to help Lisha and the others, but Aerie was worried. She pointed out that Lux couldn't defeat the abyss using only the wyvern, and he also wasn't allowed to use his black sword. From her perspective, there was nothing Lux could really do at that moment. Still, Lux asked Aerie not to worry about him. He said everything would be fine and promised he wouldn't leave her alone. Before heading out, Lux asked Cruel Chieffer to protect the school in his absence. Meanwhile, Lisha was still fighting off the gargoyles. She asked if Chalice and Tilfer were okay. Unfortunately, Chalice said they had to retreat as they were no longer in condition to fight. Lisha realized she needed to target the man holding the whistle, convinced that it was the key to controlling the abyss. Regrid mocked her, calling her a disgrace as a so-called princess who blindly obeyed the orders of a man. He even suggested that it would be better for her to just sit quietly in a prison cell. Lisha refused to back down and fired back, saying Regrid was even more pathetic for being the kind of man who would talk like that only when he had the upper hand. Regrid blew the whistle again, prompting the gargoyles to attack Lisha. She tried to dodge and counterattack, but she was struck once more. Then she turned her attention to Regrid and launched an attack directly at him, which finally exposed him as a rebel to everyone around. Regrid struck back, knocking Lisha down. Rebel forces from the former kingdom began to arrive. At that moment, Lux contacted Lisha, urging her to stay conscious, but she expressed how powerless she felt, admitting that she had never been able to do anything that made her feel like a true queen. Even pretending to be a princess had been painful. Still, she said that this time she wanted to prove herself. Regrid approached her, saying he would remind her who she truly belonged to. He forcefully exposed the mark on her lower abdomen. Laughing, he declared that he was the one who had placed that mark there. Lisha's memories from the past came flooding back. Enraged, she threw her sword at Regrid and the blade cut his cheek. Infuriated, Regrid prepared to strike her down. But just in time, Lux arrived and blocked the attack. Lux admitted that he had failed to protect people as a prince and had felt powerless. But this time, he wanted to stand by Lisha's side and help her. He wanted the world to recognize her as the rightful queen of the Atismata Kingdom. Regrid severed the wyvern's arm. He didn't know Lux and underestimated him from the start. Lux immediately activated his black sword to summon Bahamut. Regrid was stunned to realize that the drag he had to face was a special black one. He never expected Lux to possess such a thing, neither did Lisha. At that moment, Aerie noticed that Lux had finally used the black sword. It was then that Cruel Chieffer realized the truth. Lux was the black hero. Lux fought against multiple gargoyles, dodging every attack with incredible speed and taking them down in an instant. It was said that during the coup 5 years ago, nearly 1,200 drags owned by the royal army had been destroyed by a single drag knight. Agreed finally understood who stood before him. It was Lux, the seventh prince of the Arcadia Empire. He couldn't comprehend why Lux had survived when the rest of the royal family had perished, and more importantly, why a royal prince was now standing in his way. Confused and frustrated, he asked if Lux intended to become some kind of hero. Without giving a reply, Lux launched an attack and blew Regret away right then and there. Ayuri knew the truth about her older brother. He wasn't a hero. He was the one who had destroyed the Arcadia Empire. He was the Drag Knight, often referred to as the weakest undefeated.